Everybody, welcome. Everyone who is joining us. We're getting everything all set up for us to be streamed into our Facebook community. And I see lots of friends hopping on the Zoom. Welcome. Everyone who's hopping in on the Zoom. Say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're watching from. We're so happy that you're here. And as we are seeing the stream rolling out on Facebook, if you're watching us on Facebook, you could always hop over to the Zoom if you want to say hi in person and turn your camera on if you want to and say hello or ask your questions. Or you can put your questions as usual into the comments of the Facebook stream. I'll be monitoring that as well and passing your questions on to Grant and Taylor. But it is 2:01, so I think we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to everyone who's here. Trenzy Summer School has been so cool and so fun to see all of our community kind of coming together to learn and grow together. I'm very, very grateful to all of these experts who are very, very busy and have taken the time to come and train and share some knowledge with our community. And if you're watching this replay on our summer school landing page, come on over and say hi to us at trenzy.co. We would love to hear from you. Reach out to our 24/7 CS team via the chat feature at trenzy.co and let us know if this was helpful to you. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and pass this right off to Grant and Taylor. If y'all want to introduce yourselves and dive right in, we're so excited to hear from you. And we thank you for coming to join us today.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. We really appreciate you guys having us today. Really excited to be speaking with everybody in the Trenzy community. So this is the power of branding in your growth strategy. We're going to keep this relatively short for you guys, likely a 15-minute or so presentation, and then we'll give you guys some time for Q&A to ask Grant and I anything that's on your mind. So before we actually dive into the branding piece, I just want to start with a quick who we are so you guys get an idea of who it is that you guys are actually talking with. So Grant and I, we are the partners of Duo Strategy. We are a product marketing agency specializing in both B2B and B2C brands and focusing on the acquisition funnel there. We were founded in 2019. To this point, we have worked on over 40 engagements spanning from everything from SaaS in the e-commerce space. Obviously we work with Trenzy, to big enterprise SaaS like mass communication softwares, enterprise AI surveillance, and then to more consumer-facing applications within fintech, within health and wellness. We even work with some SMBs. So we've seen pretty much every funnel under the sun, and e-commerce is certainly one that we have some experience in as well. We were recently recognized by Clutch as one of the top B2B marketing agencies in Los Angeles, so we're really thrilled about that. And to date, we've managed over $1 million in ad spend for our clients. So we have a ton of experience with paid advertising and what it means to drive cost-effective results. And so what I want to talk about now are just the key takeaways for what I hope, if nothing else, you guys can take away from this webinar and just to have stick in your mind when you're thinking about your marketing moving forward. So the first piece would just be that strong branding results in long-term growth. If there's one thing that Grant and I have noticed over the past 4 years since we started Duo that has been an X factor with our clients, it's that the branding really drives results and helps improve the results, whether you're doing a paid advertising initiative, SEO, social media advertising, whatever it is, having that brand in the center of your growth engine is a vital piece to having success with outward facing marketing initiatives. The second piece would be that imitating companies whose brands that you guys like is easier than you might think. You might see the top dogs in your industry and think, it's going to be hard for me to be able to duplicate that. But we're going to walk you through a couple ways that you can, easily accomplish that and get to a place in which you are looking like, somebody's in the top of the industry and you're creating, a very similar impression to, other people that you guys are looking up to and hoping that you're going to build your business up to. And then the third piece would just be that although branding is super important, it needs to work hand in hand with acquisition marketing. So, building a great brand, a great landing page, social profile is how you speak with your clients, a vital piece one, but you need to couple that with, actual acquisition marketing efforts, whether that be paid advertising or organic social media initiative, or even, sales related activities. Anything like that, couple that with your branding is going to be what's really going to hypercharge your marketing and drive in the new customers that, I imagine one of the main reasons you guys are attending this webinar, how you can, drive more sales and things like that. So why is brand so important in paid advertising? I'm going to touch on the paid advertising piece here just because that's one of the core things that we do, something that we have a lot of experience with. And there's really three main key points that I want to discuss today. So the first one is that advertising costs are skyrocketing across ad platforms. Now, there's a couple different reasons for that, but one of the main reasons I want to touch on are data privacy laws. You guys probably noticed back in April, Apple released their newest iOS 14.5, and it essentially restricted the data that was available to marketers and just any consumer that's on any of these app platforms, whether it's Meta or TikTok or LinkedIn or Google. And you probably noticed you've been on an application before and it asks, whether or not you want to allow tracking. And so that big shift essentially just restricted all of that data, which made it more difficult for businesses to get in front of the right audience, just because you have less audience targeting capability than you've ever had before. The second piece would be that D2C competition is rising. So in 2021, the e-commerce market was valued at 4.9 trillion. That is forecasted to grow 50% year over year up until 2025, where it's estimated to be worth 7.4 trillion. So as you guys can see, a huge growing market. I'm sure you guys already know that. You've probably seen it reflected in your sales over the past couple of years. But because of that, there are, many more players that you're going to be competing with and trying to grab the attention of the, same consumers that you're hoping to drive into your e-commerce store. And then the third piece is that machine learning is more prevalent within ad networks than it's ever been before. And so, one thing that people used to be able to do that really was a huge factor in driving their performance was just hiring a skilled and a experienced paid media manager or media buyer. That's still the case. It's still important to do that, but because of machine learning and how it's become more prevalent, that person just has less levers to pull today than they've ever had in the past. And so because of all of these reasons, again, having a strong brand is really important, and it really helps with attracting and retaining customers, and, more so today than any other time, really within maybe not the history of marketing, but it's important is, I think, the main takeaway. So with all of that said, I think you guys are probably asking, where do I start?
Yes. So obviously, I think Taylor hopefully has convinced you guys that branding is important. It obviously is. The question is, it can seem intimidating at times. And we just want to walk you through what is a quick exercise that I think is going to be applicable to all of your guys' businesses that you can do, as soon as you get off this call, within the week, whatever it may be. So this is typically where we start with every single one of our clients. And it's just a quick jump start to your branding. And it's simply, as Taylor mentioned before, looking at what your competitors are doing, what other companies are doing that are doing it right. So one of the first things you want to do is just write down 2 or 3 competitors in your industry that can be related, whether it's you guys are in the women's clothing industry, or whether you're in the handbag industry, whatever it may be, and take a look at everything. Take screenshots is really important. Taking screenshots of what they're doing, putting it into a file, a PDF, Figma file, something like that. What do their ads look like? What does their landing page look like? What is the structure of their lead flow when you go through? What do their email newsletter looks like? Sign up for all those things. And just getting a real understanding of their funnel, how they're talking to their market, how they're responding to their market, become part of their market, whether you're a buyer of them, and just look at what they're doing. And then number 2 is you're actually going to take 1 or 2 brands of any industry that you admire. This could be, whether it's a technology company, it could be an app company, it could be whatever you guys are, potentially interested in. I'm sure there's a few companies, whether it's the food you eat or the place you go to buy your clothes, stuff like that. One recommendation you'll see, don't choose Apple. A lot of our clients, we always do this exercise and they always give us Apple. Like, we love Apple and their branding. I wouldn't choose brands like that. It's a little different for these SMBs, for small to medium-sized businesses. Choose ones that, again, are smaller on the startup side and that, again, you admire, or you've seen their ads before and you like them. And then we'll actually give you, in the next slides, we'll actually show you what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, so this is a competitor research that we put together for one of our clients, 2 of their top competitors, Slack and ClickUp. And this just gives you guys an example of things that you can look at that are going to give you a good indication of what you're going to want to put together when it comes to your paid advertising or your social media posts or the blogs that you're putting together. And so right here, looking at Slack and ClickUp, you can see, like, what do their images look like? What are they showcasing their product? Are they lifestyle images? What type of copy are they using? What is their call to action? And then, just taking a look at both of these, you'll notice like, you probably fall, or you have a preference toward one of Slack or ClickUp. That's what you're going to find with your two competitors. And you're going to figure out, where exactly does my brand fall in between these? Do I want mine to be a little more vibrant and pop a bit more like, say, ClickUp? Or do I want a more corporate feel and, a little more muted colors like Slack? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just about finding the preferences that match, the business that you've built to this point, and having a starting point. So, whether you're a designer yourself or you're bringing on a designer, to say, hey, this is what I like about this brand. This is what I don't like. I'm going for something in between these two. And same could be said with their landing pages. And so, take a look at their landing page, go through their funnel, see what that user experience looks like. And that'll give you a good indication of what you want your landing page and your actual, conversion process to look like on your website. And, exact same process, just accumulate some of those assets, take screenshots for your web designer, say, hey, I like this, I don't like this. And that's going to be a really easy way for you to mimic some of these top brands and people that are successful in your field, and then begin to iterate from there and make it your own once you have some data back and you're feeling confident about how your funnel is performing. So with all that said, you guys might be asking, okay, what now?
Yeah, so I know it seems like a lot, and this is where we like to enter something called brand enhancements. I think people are probably familiar with brand guides or brand books and things like that. Coca-Cola has them. Coca-Cola went through a rebrand. You see these companies, these massive companies, go through big rebrands, and it seems, I think, a bit intimidating in a lot of ways. A lot of brand books, a lot of brand decks are 40, 60 slides, and it's documents, it's everything. It's it takes 6 months to a year sometimes for these branding companies to put together all this stuff. We don't take that approach with a lot of companies. We work with a lot of startups, and I know some of this doesn't seem as applicable. It's a lot of software stuff, but the same rules apply to e-commerce. Just like we were talking with Slack and ClickUp, you can compare any two companies. So at this point, you've looked at the companies or the competitors, other companies you like, and you just take into account everything that they're doing from a branding standpoint. Now it's about putting your brand enhancements together. And we take a 80-20 rule to this. So basically 20% of the brand guidelines or the brand enhancements we're talking about here represent around 80% of your digital presence. And for most of you, as long as you guys have a website or, basic website, you'll have a lot of these things already. And really all it is your typography. So fonts, secondary fonts, primary fonts, the colors, primary, secondary, icons. It could just be an icon pack that you guys can get. And again, we're going to link a lot of this at the end of this slideshow to find all these things. And then graphics, illustrations, and mockups. And mockups, I'm sure all of you guys have for all of your products. Again, those 5 or 6 things are really going to be what represents you guys online. And it's a great place to start to get you aligned, team aligned, everyone just on board to really figure out, okay, now that we have this brand book and it's 10 to 15 slides, we know what the feel and look of our site or the feel and look of our brand is. Let's move that into our website. Let's move that into our landing pages, whether it's changing some fonts here and there on landing pages, or whether it's changing out the colorway of what your mockups look like. And then you're also going to bring that to your social profiles. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm sure you guys are all part of. You're going to want to update those things as well, and you're going to be in a good place.
So once you've done that, what is the result? So 1, you're going to increase trust with your business. Strong brands create stronger relationships with their customers. The second piece, you're going to create differentiation outside of your product. So let's say that you sell, really soft t-shirts. Well, there's probably another 5, 10, 15, 100 other companies that do that. If you have a strong brand, you've taken the time to curate that and all those things that Grant had just mentioned, you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from your product. And, because of that relationship that you've been able to build with your customers. Third piece would be just increasing brand awareness and recognition. Of course, I'm sure, you guys see a red and black logo, you might think Coca-Cola or something like that. Obviously having a really strong brand is just going to make you more recognizable, which is going to drive people into your store. And also, that it just goes back to building trust, right? If they recognize your brand, they're going to be more likely to buy from you. And then the third piece, it allows you to charge more. There's a reason that brands like Gucci and Prada, are able to charge a premium. It's because they've spent years and years and years curating their brand, aligning themselves with being a premium product. And it all comes back to the things that we're saying, and just building on top of that and getting to a point in which you've developed such deep relationships with your customers that, you know, they wouldn't leave you for anything. Even if you do charge 2 or 3 times more than your next competitor, you know, people buy the brand at that point. It's not about the product, it's about what the brand represents. And, you know, that's the power of branding within your growth strategy. And so in terms of a final recommendation.
Yeah, so I know we talked a lot about branding and how important it is, and it is important, don't be wrong. And Taylor just actually alluded to the fact that companies spend years, right, doing that. And why do they have to spend years? Because it takes a lot of people to see your brand over and over for it to become either a household name or just common, at least in your industry, right? So it doesn't take the place of acquisition marketing at all, because at the end of the day, you need the eyeballs, you need the people seeing your brand on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And really seeing the ROI of brand building, it takes time, but the more eyeballs you get and the faster you do it, the more likely your brand is to be recognized. So overall, if you guys are able to combine, you know, paid acquisition with branding in an effective manner, it's going to lead to lifelong customers and hopefully brand evangelists for a very long time. Lastly, here, there's some tools to use. So as we mentioned, we obviously showed a lot of different ways to attack branding. We wanted to share some links here. So we have Figma, that's for design. I'm not sure what you guys are familiar with, but Webflow for landing pages. These are all tools we use on a daily basis. Envato is going to be a great place for you guys to get graphic templates and designs, icon packs. Again, you want to just get the basics out. We're putting all this stuff together. It doesn't need to look professional. You put it all into one giant folder, figure out what you want using your competitors, and then ideally you actually get this to a designer for, you know, either an Upworker or a freelancer, or you guys can try it yourself. I'm not sure who's that familiar with design, depending on it, but it's really just gonna, if you give it all these things that we put together to a designer, they're really gonna be like, wow, this is great. They're gonna be able to deliver a great brand enhancement deck or just a quick brand guidelines deck that's gonna be much more effective for you and your team to get aligned on what you guys want to project. And then there's also some competitor spying stuff in here too, SimilarWeb, Facebook transparency. There are links to show you how to do it and how to look at you know, Facebook ads and funnels and all those different things. So use these tools. We'll be sending this deck out after, and then you guys can go and look through and pick which ones you want to use.
Yeah, and on top of that, if anybody, you know, watching this or, you know, watching this after the fact, I guess you could just watch it in general, you know, is interested in discussing with Grant and I, we're also happy to set up individual meetings and point you guys in the right direction with whatever it is your growth initiative is. So that concludes at least the deck portion of this. You know, that was a bit of talking from Grant and I. Would love to open up the questions to you guys and answer anything that you have, whether it be on branding or just performance marketing in general. You know, we'll do our best to answer those questions.
This is so cool, you guys. This triggered a lot of great thoughts in my mind too, for small business owners, especially, just to even think about this. So while I ask my question, everyone else think if you have questions. This kind of aligns with a couple of the pre-submitted questions that we had, just kind of where to even start. If you're a one-man show, if you're working from home, you know, a lot of our sellers in our community are, you know, moms or dads working from home, trying to make a business for themselves where they can create some time freedom. I love the concept of just building your own. I think a lot of people just dive right into e-commerce right away, and there's not much strategy. They just they throw together a website and try to sell, right? So the concept of making your little deck of, even if it's only 3 or 4 slides, here's the fonts I'm going to use, here's the colors that I'm going to use in my business. In our industry, photos. Grant and Taylor, do you think it matters to try and have photos that are unique to your branding, hiring models or shooting yourself? Or do you think using stock photos? What are some ways that someone in the fashion industry could kind of differentiate if they're selling, like you said, a similar product to the thousands and thousands of competitors? Do you have any advice or things to think about, questions to ask ourselves on how to differentiate your fashion business from the millions of other fashion boutiques online? I think that's a question that's asked a lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure if you have any feedback on it, Taylor, but I think for differentiation with e-commerce, it's tough, right? Because you don't want to use stock photos, can't really use stock photos. But at least in the very beginning, it's going to be a lot easier to bring on, say, a designer of some sort and do mock-ups of your product on different models, whatever way. There's going to be a lot more things you can do with that than it is going to be starting with getting models and a professional photographer to come in. And there's two different routes. One of our great starting points would honestly be screenshots. We've mentioned screenshots before. Take pictures of what you want it to look like, and then talk to a designer on Upwork, whatever it is. There's tons. I would recommend going to Eastern Europe and finding designers out there. They're great, and they're really well put together. They have great workflows, and just hiring them. And it's not going to be a huge investment. It's going to be $250, $300. The most important thing for any designer when you're speaking with them is, I think so often, especially people who aren't in design, they come up to a designer and they say, hey, this is what I want. And they do it like through conversation or text. And they say, this is what I'm thinking. I kind of like this, kind of like that. As opposed, they're designers because they're visual. Give them all of the screenshots, all the examples you can, and just put those things together. I talked about like clear analysis, and that designer's gonna make you say, great, I can make this look even 10 times better than what you sent me. They'll do the mock-ups, they'll do whatever it is. In e-commerce, I know we're not that familiar with like the taking of photographs or working with photographers. I'm not sure how much it typically costs. But I would say if I was starting e-commerce, I would find a designer to do the mock-ups and use my brand in it and make sure it's nailed to the point where, we can actually sell using those mock-up photos.
So even going to like a Fiverr or a website like that with your short little, your deck of what you've made with your colors, your fonts, your pictures, your screenshots, all of that, and just finding someone.
And that's what I'm saying. You don't even need to like pick necessarily, like you can just find the fonts of like, hey, I like this. I like the way this feature box looks, and say, designer, figure out what font they used. Or, I think it's this font, or I think it's something similar. Like that's their job, right? So they'll try to figure those things out. It's just with designers, you always want to be more visual than you are explaining things in most cases. So when you have all of these things we talked about, and you have the competitor analysis and say, I like this about it, I like this about it, it just gives them so much more to work with. And then as opposed to just saying, hey, I like the brand of, Buck Mason, can you make that happen?
Yeah, I like that. How important do you think it is for small shops to insert their own personal brand into their business? Do you feel like that makes it easier to differentiate if they're willing to have their face be the brand of their company?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say a lot of those things you don't even need to worry about as much at the beginning. If you're just starting out, like we do this all these companies, and again, we're copying, right? Imitation is a serious form of flattery, truly. We're imitating a lot of what these competitors are doing. But by the end of it, by the time you get your brand deck back, by the time you're running some marketing, by the time you're doing everything, you've developed something else entirely when you get to that point. So whether you want to do that and say, okay, now I can start pushing myself into the brand, I can start showing that I'm a figurehead for it. That's up to you.
I like that a lot. Does anyone who's on the Zoom have questions? I asked the questions from the Facebook thread. And if we keep it short and sweet today, that's totally fine too.
Okay, I have a question. I'm other Hannah. We have a good amount of users who are brand new to e-commerce. So my question is for them. What is, to you guys, in your opinion, the most important thing to start with? Is that like we need to determine our fonts, our colors, our like legit branding first and foremost, or do we need to focus somewhere else to start?
Are you saying like you're brand new, like you're literally just figuring, you just signed up for Trendsy, basically?
Pretty much, yeah. We have a lot of people who are coming into the entrepreneurial world. They have no idea, they haven't done it yet. And a lot of people, their first question is, where do I start? So you have Trendsy, you have your products, they're totally available to you. You're going to make your website. Like, do we need to get colors and font down right away? Or should we, what do you guys think?
Well, it depends if you're talking to branding or if you're talking in like regards to like starting your business, right? So it's like, are you asking?
Let's say we've had our website ready. We've made a website. It's very basic. We don't have any kind of like flow. Our Instagram colors and graphics are not the same as our website. Do we need to like really like, I think I just answered it for myself.
Or should there be A/B testing, basically? Is that what you're asking?
Pretty much, yeah.
If you I mean, there's some say to testing out branding, but I will say, and we've done this with companies too, like, okay, well, maybe we'll test out this colorway versus this colorway and run some paid ads for it. it's just not worth it unless you have the money to test things out online like that. People always ask us to do that in some ways, and sometimes they do have the money, and it's like you can run those ads for, you can spend $10, $15, $20,000, and sometimes the click-through rate isn't that different. Sometimes the results aren't that different from one another, and you're like, well, this one's like 1.6% better than blue. And it's like, okay, well, we spent a lot of money trying to figure this out. I think what's more impactful is, again, starting with that brand enhancement stack is like, it's just looking at the competitors, looking at the industry leaders, and focusing just on colors, logo. If I had to start somewhere, it'd be colors, logo, font. Taylor always makes fun of me because he thinks I care too much about fonts, but I promise you it's a subconscious thing. It's very important. We put a couple plugins in there. There's a plugin called What the Font. It's a super easy free plugin. You can go to any site that literally exists and just go to their website, figure out what font they're using, and then go to Google Fonts and find something similar for free. I would start with their logo, font, colors, and then kind of build on top of that. But with e-commerce, I know how important photo shots are, how important images are. So, I know that's probably the next thing up, is figuring out either a good photographer to take those photos. But again, I imagine that's pretty tough to do, especially for someone who's just starting out, which is why I would typically go the mockup route. Envato, all these different websites have like literal graphic templates where it's like, it looks very, very real. Like most of the images you probably see sometimes are that. And then you just simply take your design for your t-shirt or whatever it is and just plug it in on Photoshop. Again, you can have a designer do that. Fiverr for sure. Fiverr people do that. $5, and then you have your mockup good to go, and you guys will be set.
What a cool little 30-minute speed session. I like this. And I like all the value. Thanks for sharing the links, the clickable links with the tools. We will share those on underneath of the replay. For those of you who are on the live, if you want to watch the replay or, kind of go through some of our SEO session from a couple of weeks ago, I've watched it 3 times since, because there was too many little things that I needed to absorb for myself. So if you want to come back and watch in the replay on the summer school page, we'll also include all of those links and have the deck available for download if you'd like that. Taylor and Grant, you guys are awesome. Thanks for giving us this time. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to prepare. Thank you very, very much. You see a question. Let's have your question.
On Facebook.
Thank you, Hannah.
Danielle is asking, not sure if this is relevant, but for brand awareness, how long do you recommend a Facebook ad to run? Is a month super effective?
So a brand awareness campaign, I guess it depends on what the goal is. A month is a decent amount of time, but you need a metric at the end of it, right? So you need to figure out what is your overall goal for running that advertisement. But I would say it's more based upon like the clicks. It's the impressions is one thing, the spend is one thing, but what are the amount of clicks you're getting? Typically for us to do a test, like a really simple test, we usually want to see, and this isn't B2B land, but we're looking for 100 to 200 clicks to like make some kind of decision. Typically, sometimes it costs a lot more, but I would really be looking at the clicks overall, because that's people who've actually gotten to that next step, actually seen what's on that second page or whatever it may be. Those are people that are legitimately interested, as well as looking at like click-through rate. So if you're going to look at a few metrics, look at cost per click, click-through rate, and total clicks.
Cool.
So a month would be long enough if you get the clicks.
Very cool. Okay. Thank you everyone so much for being here, taking time out of your day. Really appreciate it from our guests and from our speakers. Thank you so much. Everyone have a beautiful weekend. See you later.
Yeah, thanks guys.